So welcome back to the show. Like I said, I was going to give you some of the data on how these Democratic debates affected the actual primary race right now, who managed to make more of a name for themselves in the polling, who managed to get their favorability rating up, who took a huge hit in terms of their favorability rating, who is putting pressure on the leaders of this primary now. So I thought it would be important to dive into all of that. I gave you my winners and losers in terms of my own personal opinion earlier today. And now we're going to go through the actual data on who won the most intangible, what would be the best word to even say, tangible momentum going forward in terms of competing in this Democratic primary. So the first numbers we're going to go to are from the morning consult. Then we're also going to look at some numbers from 538. I do want to preface one other thing before I start going through the morning consult numbers too. I had put out a video earlier today that said that Bernie Sanders has the highest favorability rating out of any presidential candidate in the Democratic primary, according to 538. That is true, but Morning Consult disagrees, and they still have Joe Biden slightly ahead of Bernie Sanders in terms of his favorability rating. But like I said, on 538, they have Bernie Sanders slightly ahead of Joe Biden in terms of his favorability rating. So it's very close either way. 538 says Bernie's ahead in terms of favorability, and Morning Consult says Biden is slightly ahead in terms of favorability. So here are some of the major numbers from this Morning Consult poll. So Joe Biden remains in the lead with 33%. However, his support saw a decline nearly as steep as Harris's rise. He lost 5 points following the debates. So 5 points is a pretty tough drop for Joe Biden. I mean, he's still substantially in the lead, but you can see how quickly his support is eroding away. I mean, he's not on solid ground whatsoever. And a lot of people on the left have been saying this for a while now, that Joe Biden's record is going to consistently come back up, and it's going to bite him in the ass every single time that it does come back up, because he doesn't have a very good voting record. Now, are there bright spots? Was Joe Biden on the right side of certain issues throughout history? Of course. But his past, in terms of his voting record, is very checkered. So there is a lot of dirty laundry that can come back up on Joe Biden during these debates, and stuff that he's not going to be able to defend well. He doesn't seem ready to be able to defend these stances in the way that he would need to be able to really fight and give somebody like a Kamala Harris a run for their money when they're debating on that specific topic. So yeah, I think Joe Biden's going to keep floundering. I think his history is against him. I think he's not in touch with the times anymore. I don't think he's in touch with the Democratic base. And I think the next round of debates will only expose that even more, and he'll probably drop even more steeply after that. But I think even in the meantime, a lot of those people that think that we got to vote for Joe Biden because he's the best chance at winning and beating Trump may be looking at that and saying, he's looking pretty weak right now in terms of just holding up against the other Democratic candidates. So is he really the one that we have to vote for just to be able to beat Trump? Or is that maybe Kamala Harris or Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren? So I think he's going to consistently lose more and more people. We'll probably see a gradual decline right now. And once the next debates come up, or if there's any kind of other scandal of him saying something ridiculous in the meantime, then we'll probably see another steep fall off for Joe Biden. And then now it's all a matter of where do those numbers go if they're leaving Joe Biden. So mainly after this particular debate, they went to Kamala Harris. She saw the highest rise out of any of the Democratic candidates. Let me pull her numbers up here. Harris now polls at 12%, up 6 points from the previous week. This puts her in third place alongside Senator Elizabeth Warren, who also polled at 12%, a 1% dip compared to the previous week. So obviously the Elizabeth Warren 1% dip, that's within the margin of error, so maybe no dip at all. But either way, she stayed kind of stagnant after these debates, which is what a lot of people kind of felt like after. I felt like she was one of the winners of that debate, mainly because she didn't damage herself in any way, and she put out a strong performance, but it wasn't a show-stealing performance where you would see her numbers skyrocket after that, like Kamala Harris had. Kamala Harris had a lot of cameras flashing type of moments of her ripping into Joe Biden that night, so she's going to be the one that gets the most meteoric rise out of these debates. But I thought Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were steady. they didn't have any weak spots that were shown during that entire debate at all. So I think they came out of it perfectly fine. I think they're still more than contenders for this Democratic primary, and I think they're far more in contention than Joe Biden is, despite polling lower at this particular point in time. So, so you have Bernie Sanders is in second still at a steady 19%. So you have, to round out the top four, you have Biden at 33 with a 5-point drop off. You have Bernie staying basically steady at 19%. And then you have Kamala Harris on a meteoric rise of 6 points up to 12%. And she is now tied with Elizabeth Warren, who basically stagnated or had a 1% dip and is at 12%. So now let's get to some of the other ones that are still kind of hanging around from the establishment wing, like Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke. Support for Buttigieg and former Texas Rep. Beto O'Rourke dropped slightly. Buttigieg fell from 7% to 6%. Now, again, that's within the margin of error. O'Rourke fell from 4% to 2%, but again, these drops are within the polls' margin of error. So, yeah, you knew Beto O'Rourke was going to fall too. Beto O'Rourke and Joe Biden were clearly the biggest losers out of those two debate nights. And Buttigieg, like I had said in my review of the debates when I was picking my winners and losers, I just felt like he had some good moments. He has very flowery language, like I said. He's a good speaker, but he doesn't have a lot of substance there. He didn't have too many standout moments. He's had a lot of controversy going around behind the scenes with him in terms of the policing in South Bend, Indiana. So, yeah, I think he's starting to really lose some luster. There's only so far that your speaking pretty can get you. So, especially in this day and age and this particular Democratic primary where there's so much policy being talked about during these debates. So, yeah, Pete Buttigieg basically stagnant as well. O'Rourke saw a bit of a drop. And then favorability ratings, Joe Biden, according to the Morning Consult, maintains the highest favorability rating among likely voters at 71%, with Sanders trailing him at 67%. Warren came in third at 63% and was followed by Harris with 55%. So Warren and Harris, they're hanging in there. I think those are the four that we really have to watch in terms of who has a legitimate chance at getting the nomination. It's Biden, it's Bernie, it's Harris, and it's Warren. And I think Bernie and Warren have the best overall shot, but I think Harris is going to be in the top three there. And I think Joe Biden, I think he's going to have real trouble keeping up. I think that lead's going to keep slipping. And the optics of Joe Biden's lead continuing to slip only hurt him even worse because he's supposed to be the quote-unquote winner candidate. And it's not as much about substance as it is about Joe Biden winning. And the more he keeps losing points, the more people are not going to associate him with being a winning candidate anymore. And the more Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders keep having good moments in debates and saying the right things before these debates, and Joe Biden keeps sticking his foot in his mouth, like the waiter comments they made the other day, and that he's made over the years. He's made that same waiter comment multiple times. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Joe Biden with these gay waiter comments that he had talked about the other day. So he just can't help himself. Joe Biden is consistently just shooting himself in the foot now. And then you have people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris, who I find all three of them to be at a bare minimum very competent politicians. They're in touch with what the Democratic base wants, and they bring energy and fervor to the base as well. So now, like I've said before, I'm not a huge Kamala Harris fan, but I have to give her credit in terms of she is energizing a lot of that centrist Democrat base and casual voter base that Joe Biden was pulling from, and I think she's doing very well at energizing them and getting them to flip over from Joe Biden to her. So she is definitely still in this. And we have Bernie Sanders staying very steady, Elizabeth Warren staying very steady. And then the biggest two in flux, I think, is going to be Joe Biden going down in a negative fashion and then Kamala Harris shooting up to be in contention. So we'll see where the numbers break going forward. Let's go over to 538 really quickly. I still think that Bernie Sanders is going to win the nomination, by the way. Still second place, Joe Biden slipping, and I don't think Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren can take Bernie Sanders down in any meaningful way, the way that they can take down Joe Biden. He doesn't have the same weaknesses. He's not going to have that same kind of steep fall off of support because people know what he stands for. He doesn't shoot himself in the foot every time he opens his mouth. And he's going to go out there and fight for the things that he believes in, which is why the people support him. So you can count on him staying consistent. And I think that's going to be enough for him to maintain his base, add some more on, and withstand any run from Warren or Kamala Harris in the future. And I think Joe Biden's just going to continuously drag himself down into the mud, and Bernie Sanders will get the nomination, in my opinion. So here are some of the numbers from 538. This is where I was saying that Bernie Sanders is more favorable. So here's favorability ratings for major people from the first debate night. Elizabeth Warren came into the debate at a 63.4% approval or favorability rating, and she finished the night with a 73% approval rating. Beto O'Rourke came into the debates 48.4% or favorability rating. I keep saying approval. Similar, but still. So Beto O'Rourke, he came in at 48.4%, and then after the debates, he's now at 48%. Cory Booker came in at 47%, and now he is at 56.4%. So he did himself some favors there. Not as astronomical as some people would have made you believe after the first debate was over. Some people made it seem like Cory Booker was going to have the Kamala Harris astronomical rise in terms of popularity, but he may have had a slight more shot if Kamala Harris didn't have such a good performance, but Kamala Harris really put Cory Booker away, and I think it's going to be harder and harder for him to find himself a way to get in through the establishment wing, and nobody on a progressive wing that supports Bernie Sanders is going to go vote for Cory Booker. So I think he doesn't really have a lane to get into contention at this point. Amy Klobuchar is as vanilla as anything I've ever seen, but 31.2% favorability coming in, 40.6% favorability going out. Julian Castro did himself major favors according to 538. He went into the debates with a 29.3% favorability rating, and after the debates, he is now at a 49.1% favorability rating. So he, like a lot of people had felt, he did himself a lot of favors, and he's actually probably pushing in ahead of Cory Booker now in terms of the establishment wing. Like, if you were looking at the establishment candidates, obviously you still have to say Joe Biden at the top just because he's polling at the top right now by such a far margin, but it's Biden, depending on how you feel about who's behind Warren. Warren is still a progressive candidate, policy-wise, and on what she wants to do. I don't classify her as an establishment candidate just because the establishment would rather her win than Bernie Sanders. I think she's still, in terms of her platform and what she wants to do with the country, is still closer to Bernie Sanders than she is to a Cory Booker. Some people may disagree with me on that, and I'd love to have that conversation with you. I think Elizabeth Warren is a very interesting topic to talk about, but we'll go back to that another time. But I think in terms of the centrist establishment Democrat race right now, it's between it's Biden, Harris, Buttigieg, and Castro, and then with like a wild card of Cory Booker. But I don't think Cory Booker has much of a shot. I think after those debates, Julian Castro and Kamala Harris probably made the biggest names for themselves in terms of being the establishment Democrat choice for this 2020 primary. But Buttigieg and who was the other one I was going to say? But Buttigieg still has some staying power there, and then Joe Biden obviously is coming in as the front runner off of name recognition, but he's still falling. So you have Biden and Buttigieg hanging around, but it seems like more and more as we watch, at least if we're going off of just the first debates, Kamala Harris and Julian Castro seemed like the most dangerous debaters from the establishment Democrat wing of the party. And Any other major ones? Bill de Blasio from 19% favorability to 28.7%. Tim Ryan, 18% to 27.8%. I don't know who could have came out of that saying, you know what, I didn't approve of Tim Ryan before, but I approve of him now. He was a disgrace, and he embarrassed himself completely in that argument with Tulsi Gabbard. So he should be like at 0% favorability rating. And Tulsi Gabbard went up from 17.7% to 29.7%. So a solid 12% increase. I don't know how she could only see a 12% increase compared to Tim Ryan getting basically a 10% increase when she straight up destroyed Tim Ryan on the same debate stage. Like, I don't know what some of these people are watching where they could give Tim Ryan any more favorability after that debate. So that's a little bit puzzling. Jay Inslee, 16.8% going in, 25.9% going out. John Delaney, one of the most annoying candidates of all of them, but also one of the goofiest candidates in terms of just funny to laugh at. He was at 15.4% going in, 24.5% going out. Now, to some of the other big fish from the second debate night, Joe Biden was at 76.5% favorability going in, and he left at 74.4%, according to 538. So he dropped a couple of percentage points. It wouldn't have even surprised me if he dropped more than that. And then Bernie Sanders, like I had reported earlier, he came into the debate at 74.3% favorability, and after the debate, he was at 75.4% favorability. So he officially has the highest favorability rating out of any presidential candidate now, according to 538. Kamala Harris came in at 56.2%. She left at 66.8%, so that's a huge rise for her, especially considering her name recognition wasn't as low as some of the more no-name candidates that had bigger rises, like Julian Castro. She was already at 56% favorability and jumped all the way to 66.8. So that is a huge jump for her when you're already that high in name recognition. And then Pete Buttigieg, 44.7% going in, did himself slight favors through the debate, but not much. 51.8% favorability afterwards. Kirsten Gillibrand just can't seem to get any traction whatsoever. She came in at 33.7%, did herself some modest favors like Pete Buttigieg did, getting up to 40.2%. Andrew Yang, Mike Cut or Mike Not Cut, came in at 23.5%, left at 33.4%, so he at least got some positive exposure out of that. Eric Swalwell, 17.4% going in, 26.3% afterwards. John Hickenlooper, 17.1% going in, 24.9% going out. I don't know who could like John Hickenlooper, by the way. He should be at like negative 4% favorability. And Michael Bennet, who should also be at negative 4% favorability, came in at 16.0% somehow, and he left at 25.5%. God knows how that's possible. And Marianne Williamson, who I thought had a good debate night in terms of getting her name out there and getting people to know who she is. We'll see how that goes for her. It may end up bringing pretty even amount of positive and negative attention to her for how polarizing her stances are and how kind of polarizing of a candidate she is because she is so unique. She went from 13.4% to 22.0%. But her unfavorability rating, just to point this out, also went from 9.2% to 26.8%. So I think she's polarizing right now. I think she will continue to win more people over, and her favorability rating will go up substantially over the rest of this time in this, because I think Marianne Williamson she's an easy candidate to like, and she stands for a lot of good things. So I know I sound like Tom Perez there, saying that I stand for good things and against bad things, but Marianne Williamson stands for good things. So I think her favorability rating will go up more and more as things go on. I'm not saying she's a contender in any way for this Democratic primary, but I think she'll do herself some favors in terms of her favorability as the next debates approach, and she has more time to just get herself out there to the public But yeah, so those are all the favorability ratings. According to 538, Bernie's the most favorable. According to Morning Consult, Biden is still the most favorable, but Kamala Harris did herself a lot of favors. Elizabeth Warren helped herself out incrementally, but didn't do any damage to herself either throughout these debates. So Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, very steady, very sound, didn't do any damage to themselves, did themselves some favors, and had a net positive through these debates. Kamala Harris and Julian Castro saw the most astronomical rise through these debates, and Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke turned out to be the biggest failures through these debates. So I think it's all very interesting. I think you have a clear idea of where I stand when I was just going through these candidates and kind of giving you my take on them as I go. But it'll be interesting to continue to check all these polls. I'll be checking polling every week for you and letting you know if there's any drastic changes for any of the major candidates that are involved in this race. And I think it'll be interesting going forward. I'm interested to see where my prediction falls compared to others, and it'll be interesting to see where the dust settles by the time the debates come around again later on. So there you have it. Those are the numbers right now. According to 538, Bernie Sanders has the highest favorability rating of any presidential candidate, and hopefully Morning Consult will get it right soon and have him higher than Biden as well. One could only hope, but I think it's just a matter of time as far as that's concerned. Kamala Harris, right now a shooting star for the establishment Democrat side. Elizabeth Warren's hanging in there as well. So it's going to be interesting going forward, guys. I'll be talking to all of you soon.